People ask me if I ever got used to being to the most intimidating surgeon at Riverside Medical Center, and I always say yes. Eventually, the way you get used to a house that was once unfamiliar and becomes the only place that feels like home. You stop noticing the thing that once made you nervous and start noticing only the thing that makes you stay. What I never told anyone was that for 3 years of real marriage, through Elena and James and the lopsided birthday cake and the flower in my eyebrows and all of it, there was a small quiet part of me that held its breath. Not because I doubted us. Not because I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop the way I used to. But because loving someone that much means understanding, at some cellular level, that you have something to lose. I used to think I was afraid of Veronica leaving. It took a Thursday afternoon in October to teach me what I was actually afraid of. Let me back up. Elena was 4. James had just turned 1. We had celebrated his birthday 2 weeks earlier with a cake that was significantly less structurally compromised than Elena's first one, which Veronica considered a personal achievement and had actually photographed with the same careful attention she gave to things that mattered. She had put it in her phone camera roll between a picture of a surgical diagram and a photo of Elena explaining something very serious to Gerald. That was Veronica's camera roll. That was our life. She had been chief of surgery for 14 months. The negotiated terms had held. She was home by 6 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she had kept that promise with the same precision she kept every promise she made, which was absolute. There had been hard weeks. There had been nights when the phone rang at 2 in the morning, and she left and came back at 6, looking like someone who had been to war and back. But she always came back. She always found me before she found sleep, a hand on my shoulder, a forehead against my hair, just checking that I was there. James had her eyes, dark and still and watching everything. Elena had her jaw and my stubbornness, and an opinion about every single thing in the known universe that she expressed without hesitation, which Veronica found privately hilarious and professionally concerning, given that Elena was 4 and already winning arguments. Gerald was still present. Gerald had opinions about James that had mellowed significantly over 12 months. Gerald was, according to Lenzina, learning to be patient. We were good. We were genuinely, solidly, built from scratch good. And then it was Thursday afternoon in October. Was at my desk when my phone rang, not Veronica's number. The hospital's main line, which meant a person was calling, not her, and a person calling from the hospital's main line at 3 in the afternoon, when Veronica was supposed to be in a straightforward procedure, was the kind of thing that makes your body understand something before your brain does. I answered, Mrs. Hayes-Chen, this is Dr. Priya Anand from Riverside Medical. I'm calling about your wife. I stood up from my desk, my chair pushed back. I don't remember doing it. There was an incident in the OR this afternoon. Veronica is stable. I need you to understand that first. She is stable, and she is being monitored, and she is going to be all right. But I need you to come in. What kind of incident? I said. My voice was very steady. I noted that with a distant clinical part of my brain. Like I was watching myself from somewhere slightly outside my own body. She collapsed during a procedure, Dr. Anand said carefully. A cardiac event. We've run initial tests, and I want to explain everything in person. She's asking for you. I called Priya, our nanny, from the car. I called my mother from the hospital parking lot. I walked into Riverside Medical Center through the same doors I had walked through 100 times, and I did not look at the department signs or the directory or any of the things that would have told me where to go. Because I already knew every hallway in this building after 3 years of working here, and 2 more of being married to the woman who ran the surgical floor. Dr. Anand met me outside the cardiac monitoring unit. She was young, younger than I expected, with the careful professional composure of someone who delivered difficult news regularly and had learned to do it with both precision and warmth. She walked me through it in the hallway before she let me in. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, she said. It's a thickening of the heart muscle. In many people, it causes no symptoms and goes entirely undetected. In Veronica's case, it appears to have been present for years. The stress and workload of the past several years, the hours, the accumulated pressure, accelerated the condition to a point where it became acute today. She collapsed mid-procedure. Her team responded immediately. The patient is fine, Veronica is fine, but, I said. She cannot continue at the current pace, Dr. Anand said, not safely. The position, the hours, the physical and emotional load she has been carrying. Something has to change. I looked at the door to the room behind her. Can I see her? I said. Yes, she said. She paused. I want to prepare you. She's frightened. I don't think she'll show it in the way most people do. But she is. I know, I said. I know exactly how she shows it. I opened the door. Veronica was sitting up in the hospital bed in a gown that was the most incongruous thing I had ever seen her wear. All of her authority lived in how she dressed for work, the white coat, the scrubs, the lanyard and the badge, and the posture that said she owned the room she walked into. Without those things, she looked smaller, not diminished, not weak, just human, in a way that the hospital usually let her pretend she wasn't. She looked at me when I came in. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were in her lap, perfectly still, and I knew that stillness. It was the stillness of someone using every available resource to maintain composure. Hi, I said. Hi, she said. I crossed to the bed and sat in the chair beside it and took her hand. Her fingers closed around mine immediately, harder than her usual grip. She did not say anything for a moment. I'm fine, she said. I know, I said. I finished the procedure, she said, before I collapsed. The patient is... I know, I said. Dr. Anand told me. The patient is fine. You are fine. Her jaw tightened further. I could feel the effort in it. I collapsed in my own oar, she said. She said it quietly, like a confession, like the most shameful thing she could imagine. I looked at her. Yes, I said. I scared my team. Yes, I scared the patient. The patient is fine, I said again. Veronica. She looked at me. Her eyes were doing the thing I had learned to read over 4 years, of watching her manage things she could not manage with surgical precision. The thing underneath the control. Fear dressed up as anger, dressed up as nothing. I squeezed her hand. I'm here, I said. I'm not going anywhere, and we are going to figure this out. Her grip tightened again. I don't know how to, she said, and I understood that she was not talking about the medical situation. She was talking about something larger. Something she had spent her entire adult life not knowing how to do. She was talking about needing to stop. About being told by her own body that the pace she had set for herself since she was 22 years old and decided she was going to be the best surgeon in every room she walked into was no longer something she could sustain. She was talking about what happened when the thing you built your identity around told you it was time to put it down for a while. I know, I said quietly, but you're not figuring it out tonight. Tonight you just have to be here. She looked at the ceiling, exhaled. James had his nap today, I said. He's fine, Elena is with Priya. She told Gerald you were at work being important. Gerald apparently clips it without question. Something shifted in her face, the smallest softening. The armor finding a crack. Gerald is very trusting, she said. Dangerously, so I agreed. She looked back at me. Her hand was still in mine. Sarah, she said. I'm not good at this, she said, at being the one who needs. I know that too, I said. I'm going to be terrible at it. Probably, I said. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. Almost. I held her hand in that hospital room until the monitors beeped, and the shift changed, and the light through the window went from afternoon to evening. I held her hand, and I thought about every time she had held mine. The triage room when I was 22 weeks pregnant and in pain and had not called her soon enough. The driveway conversation where she told me I was the least invisible person in her world. The kitchen at 2 a.m, flour everywhere, her voice steady and her eyes full, while she said she chose me every day. She had been the strong one for so long. It was my turn now. And I was ready. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of our life together. Veronica came home on the second day. She did not want to stay. This was predictable, and Dr. Anand had anticipated it, and given me a list of instructions and warning signs and the specific circumstances under which I was to call her immediately, which she delivered with the careful tone of someone who understood that telling Veronica Hayes what she could and could not do required a particular tactical approach. She came home and she did not know what to do with herself. This was the part nobody tells you about. Not the illness itself, not the fear of it, but the aftermath. The person who has organized their entire life around motion and purpose and the specific satisfaction of a job that demands everything suddenly sitting in their own house at 11 in the morning with nowhere to be and nothing to be responsible for, and procedure to perform and no residence to teach, and no decisions that only they could make. Veronica sat on the couch on the first morning and looked at the wall. I brought her coffee. Oat milk, no sugar, the way she had always taken it. She accepted it without looking away from the wall. I have 14 unread board emails, she said. You're on medical leave, I said. I'm aware. Then you know you're not reading the board emails. She looked at me with the expression that had once made residents forget how to speak. I looked back with the expression of a woman who had been married to her for 3 years and knew every version of that look and was not remotely intimidated by any of them anymore. She looked back at the wall. Fine, she said. I sat down next to her, not touching, just present. We sat there with our coffee and the morning sounds of the house. James doing his particular 1-year-old monologue from the playmat. Priya in the kitchen, the city outside doing what cities do. How are you actually feeling? I said. She was quiet for a moment. Like I failed, she said. You had a cardiac event, I said. In my own oar, Veronica. She looked at her hands. These hands that I had watched perform surgeries I could not imagine, that had signed the paperwork that restructured her own job to protect our family, that had held Elena when she was born, and James when he was born, and mine across every hard moment of the past 4 years. I built my entire life around being the person nobody had to worry about, she said. The one who handled things. I spent my deciding that needing help was a liability, and that if I worked hard enough and was good enough, nobody would ever have to take care of me because I would be too competent to require it. I looked at her. And then I married you, she said quietly, and you made me want to be taken care of sometimes. You made it feel safe, but I hadn't finished unlearning the other thing. The thing where I push until I collapse, apparently literally. I put my hand over hers. You're not failing, I said. You're learning something that most people figure out at 30, and you're learning it at 34, and that's still well within the reasonable window. She looked at me. The reasonable window, she repeated. I made that up, I said, but the principle stands. She turned her hand over and held mine. I'm going to be a terrible patient, she said again. You said that in the hospital too, I said. You're not as terrible as you think. She looked at me with something that was tired and warm and still slightly defensive, which was the most Veronica expression in her entire catalog. I'm going to need you to be honest with me, she said. When I'm being impossible, I need you not to just let me. That I can do, I said. I know, she said. That's why I'm asking you specifically. The folder appeared on the 3rd day. I found it by accident. I was looking for the household insurance documents in the filing cabinet in the study, and it was in the section labeled Medical behind Veronica's regular health records, in a plain manila folder with no label on the tab. I almost put it back without opening it. I don't know what made me look. Some instinct, some recognition of the weight of it, the careful way it had been organized. Veronica organized things with a precision that had its own signature. The documents inside were tabbed and dated and arranged in chronological order. I sat down on the floor of the study and read it. It was a year's worth of research and appointments and consultations, starting 14 months ago, around the time she accepted the chief of surgery position. Donor genetic profiles, clinic consultation notes, IVF protocol documentation, a letter from a fertility specialist outlining the options for a second pregnancy, everything annotated in her handwriting in the margins, questions, and follow-ups, and the particular notations of someone who had approached a deeply personal decision with the same thoroughness firmament she brought to surgical planning. She had been building this quietly for over a year. She had never mentioned it, not because she was hiding it from me. I understood that immediately, sitting on the floor with the folder in my hands. Not concealment, something else. She had been building the option, creating the structure, making sure it was possible and safe and real before she brought it to me, because that was how she loved. She did not come to you with half-formed hopes. She came to you with something solid she had already made sure she could give. James was here because she had done this work in secret for a year, and then one evening she had come home and put the folder on the table and said, "If you want a second child, I've been making sure we can." I had cried. She had looked slightly alarmed by the crying, and then had held me and told me the statistics of the procedure in a voice that was her version of comfort. I had forgotten, somehow, how much that folder had cost her, the time and the research and the year of quiet preparation, the choosing of us before she even told me she was choosing. I sat on the study floor for a long time, then I put the folder back exactly where it was, stood up, and went to find my wife. She was in the backyard. This was new. She had not been a backyard person before the medical leave. The backyard was a place you passed through on the way to other things. But that morning, she had taken her coffee outside, and I had watched through the kitchen window as she stood on the grass in her socks, which she also did not do before, and looked at the garden that had grown more or less on its own, because neither of us were garden people, and I had thought, something is happening in her. I went out and stood beside her. I found the folder, I said. She looked at me, something careful and waiting in her expression. The IVF research, I said, the clinic consultations, the donor profiles. The year of preparation before James. She was quiet for a moment. I was going to tell you, she said. I know, I said. I wanted to know it was possible first, that I could actually give you that. Before I said it was something I wanted to give you. I looked at her in the backyard, in her socks with her coffee, and the overgrown garden behind her. You spent a year making sure you could offer me something before you offered it. I said, yes, she said simply. That's how you love, I said. She met my eyes. She didn't say anything. But yes was in her face, plain and unguarded. I have spent 4 years watching you do things quietly that most people would need to announce, I said. You negotiated your own job contract to protect our family, and didn't mention it until someone else brought it up. You arranged backup childcare so I would never be alone and struggling again, and just presented it as logistics. You spent a year building the architecture of a second child because you wanted to come to me with something real. She looked at the garden. I'm not good at asking for things, she said. But I'm good at building them. I know, I said. And I love that about you. I love that about you, and I also need you to understand something. She looked at me. You are allowed to ask, I said. You are allowed to want things before they're complete and bring them to me half-built. And say, I don't know if this is possible yet, and I need your help figuring it out. You don't have to do everything alone first. You have not been alone for 4 years, and I need you to fully believe that. Her jaw was doing its tight thing. We're going to practice that, I said. While you're home, you're going to tell me things before they're finished. You're going to ask for things before you've figured out how to give them to yourself. And I'm going to be here. She looked at me for a long moment. That sounds uncomfortable, she said. Yes, I said, it will be. And we're doing it anyway. The corner of her mouth moved, almost a smile. You've gotten very bossy, she said. I learned from the best, I said. She put her arm around me, and I leaned into her, stood in the backyard in October, with the coffee cooling, and the garden doing what it wanted, and James's voice carrying from inside the house as he narrated something important to no one in particular. The weeks that followed had a texture unlike anything else in our life together. Veronica was home. Not passing through, not arriving late and leaving early, but genuinely home, present in the house during hours that had previously belonged entirely to the hospital. She was on modified leave for 6 weeks with a cardiac rehabilitation program and a cardiologist named Dr. Singh, who she respected, which I knew because she did not argue with him the way she argued with everyone else whose medical opinions she found questionable. She learned to ask for help, not gracefully, not naturally. It was exactly as uncomfortable as I had predicted, and she was exactly as stubborn about it as I had expected. And there were several moments where I could seize her physically stopping herself from just handling the thing herself, and instead saying, out loud, through what appeared to be mild personal anguish, "Can you get that for me?" I always said yes. I never made it a thing. I just got it and moved on because she needed it to be ordinary, and I was going to make it ordinary. She also got to know her children in a way that working 80-hour weeks had not permitted. She had always been present. Let me be clear about that. Veronica was not an absent parent. She was deliberate and fierce about the time she had with Elena and James. But there is a difference between deliberate presence, squeezed into evenings and weekends, and the slow, unscheduled accumulation of hours that comes from just being there. She learned that James had opinions about breakfast. Specific, deeply held opinions that he communicated entirely through facial expressions and the strategic rejection of whatever was placed in front of him. She spent 3 mornings figuring out his system, which she then wrote down on a notepad with the same methodical approach she brought to everything, and by the 4th morning, she had cracked it. I found the notepad later, James' breakfast protocol, itemized, with notes. I put it on the refrigerator. She found it there and looked at me. "It's a useful reference document," I said. She looked at it for a moment. "It's slightly unhinged," she said. "It's thorough," I said, the corner of her mouth, almost. She also developed a relationship with Gerald that I found genuinely moving. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because Elena decided during week 2 of Veronica's leave that Mama needed Gerald more than she did right now, and presented him solemnly at breakfast one morning with the explanation that Gerald was good at staying with people when they were not feeling well, and that she was lending him. Veronica had accepted Gerald with the gravity that statement deserved. He sat on the nightstand on Veronica's side of the bed for the rest of the leave. She did not comment on this. But I noticed that when she was reading at night, her hand would rest on the bed near him in the way you rest your hand near something that is keeping you company. I did not tell her I had noticed. Some things are better left as private. The hard conversations happened in week 4. We had been careful around it. Both of us. There was a thing that needed to be said about the future, and we had been circling it the way you circle something you know will change the shape of things. Veronica brought it up herself. We were in bed, the house quiet, James asleep and Elena asleep, and the city outside doing its nighttime things. She was on her back looking at the ceiling. "I can't go back to the way it was," she said. "I know," I said. "The job is mine. I'm not giving up the job. But the hours and the pace and the way I was treating my own body like it was a machine I could run indefinitely." She paused. I knew it wasn't sustainable. I think I knew it for a long time, and I chose not to address it because addressing it would have required me to admit that I needed things to be different, and I didn't know how to do that. I looked at the ceiling with her. "What does different look like?" I said. "I don't know exactly," she said. "I know it means a deputy chief who actually has authority and not just the title. I know it means I stop taking cases on my off days, because I feel like I should. I know it means that when you tell me you need something, I don't file it under things to address later." She turned her head to look at me. "I know it means I accept that I am not a machine," she said. "That I am a person who has a wife and 2 children, and a heart that is telling me in very clear terms that it has limits, and I should respect them." I looked at her. "That's a lot of knowing for someone who's usually in the building before announcing phase," I said. She made a sound that was fully a laugh, the real one, the one she only did with me. "I've had 6 weeks to think," she said. 6 weeks is a long time for you, I said. It's practically a lifetime, she agreed. I rolled toward her, and she made room, and her arm came around me the way it always did, the particular arrangement of the two of us in this bed in this house, which was the most familiar thing in the world to me now. I'm proud of you, I said, for collapsing in my own oar, she said. For being here, I said, for not deciding that needing to stop was the same as failing. For sitting on the couch and looking at the wall and letting yourself not know what to do. That was brave. For you, that was the bravest thing. She was quiet for a long moment. You're going to make me cry, she said. I have rounds next month and I cannot have compromised tear ducts. You don't have rounds next month, I said. You're on leave. I will have rounds eventually, she said with enormous dignity. I laughed. She held me tighter. Thank you, she said quietly. For being the strong one, I know I don't always make it easy to be. You make everything hard, I said. It's one of your best qualities. She pressed a kiss to the top of my head. I love you, she said, unreasonably and permanently. I know, I said, back. The city was quiet outside. The monitors were gone, the hospital was weeks away, and the woman who had once spent her life deciding that needing anything was a liability was lying in our bed, thanking me for being the strong one. And she meant it. No performance, no management of the moment. Just honest gratitude from a person who was learning, finally, and with great personal resistance, that being loved meant letting it reach all the way in. I held on to her in the dark. She went back to work in December, not at full capacity, doctor. Singh had been clear about the phased return, and Veronica had, to my genuine astonishment, followed the plan without attempting to negotiate it into something more aggressive. This was the most significant sign of change I had witnessed. Veronica Hayes, following a medical protocol without arguing about the timeline. I took a photograph of the calendar with the return date, circled in her handwritings because I wanted evidence. The hospital made adjustments. A deputy chief was appointed with genuine authority. 2 of the senior residents were elevated to take on caseloads that had previously defaulted to Veronica. The board, which had been understandably anxious about the incident, approved a structural reorganization of the surgical department that Veronica had proposed from her couch during week 3 of her leave, with a notepad and a laptop, and the particular focused energy of a person who is very bad at not working. She had rebuilt the department to run without her at the center of it, not because she was leaving. Because she understood now that a system that required one person to be indispensable was a fragile system, and she was too good at building things to accept fragile structures. Her first day back, I drove her. She did not ask me to. She was fully capable of driving herself. But I was up at the same hour and had made her coffee, and had the keys in my hand when she came downstairs in the white coat, for the first time in 6 weeks, and she looked at me for a moment and then said, "Okay." We drove to the hospital in the early December dark. At the entrance, she sat for a moment. "You're going to be fine," I said. "I know," she said. She said it the way she said things she had thought through completely, with the calm of settled certainty. "I'll pick you up at 6, I said. 5:30, she said. "Dr. Singh said 6, I said. "Doctor?" "Singh is not accounting for traffic patterns," she said. 5:30 is more practical. I looked at her. 5:45, she said. "Final offer. 5:45, I agreed. She leaned across and kissed me. Then she got out of the car and walked through the hospital doors, and she walked the way she always walked, like she owned the room, because she did, and she always would, but now there was something else underneath it, something that had not been there before. She walked like someone who knew they had a place to come home to. That is a different kind of confidence. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself because it has already been proven in private. Elena turned 4 the following month. The party was in the backyard, the same backyard where Veronica had stood in her socks in October, with her coffee and her overgrown garden, and the first honest fear I had ever seen her show. The January birthday because Elena had arrived in January, with the same disregard for timing she brought to everything. Gerald attended. Gerald was positioned on a lawn chair that Elena had designated as Gerald's seat, and which nobody, including James, who had recently developed ideas about claiming things, was permitted to occupy. Veronica made the cake. I want to say this clearly. Veronica made the birthday cake, not because I asked, not because it was expected. She had looked up this recipe 2 weeks prior, had tested a version on a Sunday afternoon while I was out, had consulted with Priya about the structural integrity of the frosting, and had presented the completed cake at the party with the particular quiet pride of someone who has done a thing for the first time and done it right. It was not lopsided. It was beautiful. A white cake with pale yellow frosting, and a small fondant elephant on top that was recognizably Gerald. She had made a fondant elephant. I did not know she knew how to do that, and when I asked, she said she had watched 7 tutorial videos, which was the most Veronica sentence she had ever said. Elena's response upon seeing the cake was to look at Gerald on his lawn chair and announce that Mama had made him in sugar. Veronica said Gerald was honored. I stood by the back fence, watching my wife crouch in the grass, next to our 4-year-old and our 1-year-old, and explained very seriously to Elena that the fondant Gerald's was a separate entity from the real Gerald, and that the real Gerald's identity was not compromised by the existence of a cake version. And I thought about the woman I had seen in the triage room in October. White-knuckled and frightened and stripped of every piece of armor she had spent 30 years assembling. I thought about the folder in the filing cabinet. A year of quiet preparation for something she wanted to give. I thought about the hospital bed and the backyard in socks and the nightstand where Gerald had kept vigil for 6 weeks. I thought about a woman who had spent her whole life deciding that needing things was dangerous and had spent the last 4 years, slowly and with considerable difficulty, deciding something different. She looked up from where she was crouching on the grass and found me by the fence the way she always found me, without searching, the way you locate something you know the position of without having to look. She raised an eyebrow. What, she muffing? I mouthed back. She gave me the smile, the private one. The one that had been mine since the kitchen at 2 in the morning with flour everywhere, and her voice steady and her eyes full. I walked across the backyard to her. She stood when I reached her. I took her hand. You made a fondant elephant, I said quietly. 7 videos, she said. It looks exactly like him. I have a good eye for structure, she said. I leaned up and kissed her cheek. She turned her head and kissed me properly, the way she always did, like she meant it, which she always did. Behind us, Elena said, Gross, Mama and Mommy are kissing again. James, who had one word in his vocabulary and deployed it indiscriminately, said more. We both laughed. I want to tell you the part that stays with me, not the hospital. Not the fear of October, though that lives in me now in the way all true fears do, changed but permanent. Not the hard conversations, or the 6 weeks of leave, or the restructured department, or even the fondant elephant on a January birthday cake. The part that stays with me is a Tuesday night in February. James was asleep, Elena was asleep. Veronica had come home at 5:43, 2 minutes inside the negotiated window, and had changed out of the white coat, and we had made dinner together in the way we had started doing, both of us in the kitchen, assigned tasks, the particular domestic choreography of 2 people who have learned each other's rhythms. After dinner, she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, and she said, I want to talk about something. Okay, I said. I sat down across from her. I've been talking to Doctor. Sing about the long-term picture, she said, about what sustainable looks like. And I've been thinking about what I want the next 10 years to look like for us. I listened. I want another child, she said. She said it the same way she had said everything in the past 6 months. Directly, without the structure of prepared certainty around it, just the want itself, stated plainly. Not right now, she said. Not until Singh clears me and we know the cardiac situation is genuinely stable. But I want you to know that it's what I want. I'm not building the folder this time. I'm telling you first. I looked at her across the kitchen table. I want you to know it's there, she said. So you're not wondering. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. I know, I said. You knew, she said. I know you, I said. She turned her hand over and held on. Her thumb moved across my knuckles the way it always did when she was saying something she did not have other words for. I'm getting better at asking, she said. You are, I said, slowly and with enormous resistance. The most Veronica kind of progress, she agreed. I smiled. She smiled back. The full one, not the private one for once, but the real one, the unguarded one. The one she had given me in the driveway and the hospital room and the backyard. And now here at the kitchen table in February, 2 cups of tea and the evening quiet and our children asleep upstairs. I am going to tell you something I have never put into words. When I was the girl in the basement office filing paperwork and watching Dr. Veronica Hayes walk through the hospital like she owned it, I thought untouchable meant invulnerable. I thought the coldness was armor, and the armor was permanent, and the woman inside it had chosen to need nothing and wanted nothing, and could not be reached. I was wrong. The coldness was fear. The armor was protection. The woman inside it needed everything that everyone needs. Safety, witness, the specific relief of being known without performance. She had just spent so long deciding those things were too costly to ask for that she had nearly convinced herself she did not want them. She had nearly worked herself to death because she had not yet fully learned that being loved meant letting it be a reason to stay. She knows now. And I know that the woman I fell in love with, drunk and impulsive and accidentally in a Vegas chapel, was always this person. The one who makes a fondant elephant from 7 videos and follows a cardiac protocol without arguing and sits at the kitchen table in February and says, I want to talk about something, and means it without the architecture of completion around it. She was always this person. It just took us a while to find each other clearly enough to see it. Elena knows her mama had a sick heart and that the doctors fixed it and that it is better now. She accepted this with 4-year-old practicality, and the follow-up question of whether Gerald could also go to the doctor if he needed to. Veronica told her yes and meant it in the way she meant everything. Absolutely. James does not know any of this yet. He knows that Mama smells like the hospital sometimes, and that Mommy makes the oatmeal, and that Gerald lives on Elena's shelf, and that the kitchen at morning has a particular light that is good for sitting in. He knows that when he wakes up crying in the night, one of them always comes. He knows this so deeply he does not even have a word for it yet. He just knows it the way you know the things that were true before you had language for them. We are telling him the story when he's ready. It starts with tequila and a Vegas chapel and a question asked drunk under neon lights that turned out to be the most important question anyone has ever asked me. It continues through a pregnancy and a real wedding, and Elena and James, and a lopsided cake, and a heart that needed repair, and a woman who learned, slowly and with enormous difficulty, and the eventual grace of someone who decided to trust, that needing someone was not a weakness. It is not finished. We are not finished. We have the 3rd child that has not arrived yet. We have the years ahead that we will build together in the same way we have built everything. Imperfectly and deliberately, and with the full understanding that choosing someone is not a single moment, but a practice, daily and unglamorous and essential. We have Tuesday evenings and kitchen tables and a fondant elephant and Gerald on a lawn chair at a birthday party. We have the smile that is only mine. We have always yes, still yes. Every single time, yes.